The gala was meant to be forgettable. A room full of rich laughter, champagne glasses clinking, and conversations as thin as the crystal flutes they held. Jacob had never liked these events. He was a bookstore owner, not a socialite. But his best friend Amanda had begged him to come. Her nonprofit needed donors, and Jacob had a soft spot for her dreams. He stood near the edge of the ballroom, dressed in a plain black tuxedo, feeling like a background character in someone else's movie. The room was a blur of glittering gowns, polished shoes, and expensive perfume. And then she appeared. The woman in red. She moved like a whisper across a sea of noise. Her dress wasn't just red, it was fire. A shade too bold, too dangerous for this polite world of empty smiles. Every step she took was slow, intentional, like she owned the floor and didn't care who knew it. Her dark hair fell in waves down her back. Her eyes didn't search the room. They didn't need to. Everyone else was already watching her. Jacob saw her before anyone else did. It was like the music paused just for her. She didn't talk to anyone. She didn't smile. She just walked to the center of the dance floor, waited a moment, and began to dance alone. No partner. No introduction. She danced slowly, like she was remembering something only she had lived. People whispered. Who is she? Is she someone's guest? Did she come alone? Jacob couldn't look away. He should have, but he didn't. Not even when Amanda came up beside him and nudged his arm. You look like you've seen a ghost, she teased. He didn't respond. Amanda followed his eyes. Oh, her. You know her? Jacob asked. Amanda shook her head. No one does. She just showed up. Signed her name on the guest list as Elena. No last name. Didn't say who invited her. Elena, Jacob repeated under his breath. She's beautiful, Amanda said. And strange. Jacob nodded. Yeah. Then, just as suddenly as she had arrived, Elena vanished. 1 minute she was spinning under the soft gold lights, and the next, gone. No goodbye. No trail. Not even a glass of wine left behind. That night, Jacob couldn't sleep. He kept seeing her eyes, dark, unreadable, filled with something that didn't belong at a gala. Something deeper. Like pain. Or a secret. He told himself to forget it. She was probably a traveler passing through, a mysterious guest, a one-night question mark. Till he couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't just passing by. The next morning, rain tapped softly on the windows of his bookstore. He unlocked the door at 9 a.m. sharp, just like always. Place smelled of old paper and fresh coffee. It was quiet, peaceful. He shelved a new stack of poetry books and opened his laptop to check emails. The bell above the front door jingled. He looked up and stopped breathing. It was her. Elena. But she looked different now. No red dress. Just jeans, a black coat, and sunglasses. Her hair was pulled back, and the confidence she had worn like armor last night seemed thinner in the daylight. She looked lost. I'm sorry, she said softly. I think I'm turned around. I'm looking for Crescent Street. Her voice was calm, low, careful. Jacob cleared his throat. You're a few blocks off. You want to take a right outside, then go 2 streets down. She nodded, not moving. Thanks. He tried not to stare. You were at the gala last night. She tensed. Dancing alone, he added. Her lips curled into the ghost of a smile. You noticed. Hard not to. For a second, her eyes met his. And this time, something flickered, like recognition, like a test. I wasn't supposed to be there, she said. He raised an eyebrow. Crashing a high-profile charity gala in a red dress? That takes guts. Or stupidity, she said and smiled again, just a little more real this time. Want some coffee? He asked before he could stop himself. She hesitated. Looked toward the door. Then back at him. Yeah, she said. I think I could use some. He poured her a cup and handed it over. She took it carefully, warming her hands. I'm Jacob, he said. Elena, she replied. Just Elena. They stood in silence for a few beats, the bookstore quiet around them. Outside, the rain came down harder. You own this place? She asked. I do. Do you always offer coffee to women you meet at fancy galas? Only the ones who vanish before dessert. She laughed, soft and short, but it felt real. What were you doing there? He asked. She sipped her coffee, eyes on the floor. Trying to remember who I used to be. That answer wasn't what he expected. I don't usually dance in public, she added. You looked like you belonged there. I didn't. More silence. But not the uncomfortable kind. Kind that lets you breathe. Crescent Street's not far, he said again. She nodded. I know. I just needed to step inside somewhere. You picked the quietest place in town. That's why. He studied her face. Are you okay? She looked up. Her eyes didn't dodge the question. But they didn't answer it either. I will be, she said. Jacob didn't push further. She stayed for a few more minutes, walking slowly through the aisles. She didn't touch anything. Just read titles like they were windows into better worlds. Then she set the empty cup on the counter. Thanks for the directions, she said. He nodded. You'll be back? Maybe. Hope so. She paused at the door. Rain was falling harder now. She pulled her coat tighter. Jacob, she said without turning. Yeah, don't believe everything you hear about people. He didn't have time to ask what that meant. She stepped outside and was gone again. He stood at the window, watching the street long after she'd vanished into the rain. Red dress. Black past. She didn't belong at the gala. She didn't belong in this town. But somehow she fit. And he knew one thing for sure. She wasn't a woman you met by accident. Jacob didn't expect to see her again. But 3 days after she stepped out into the rain, Elena walked through the door of his bookstore like she belonged there. She wore a gray sweater, jeans, and black boots this time. No makeup, no red dress, no mystery, except for the one she carried in her silence. Hi, she said simply. Hey, Jacob replied, trying not to show the surprise in his voice. You find Crescent Street okay? I did. Thanks again. She glanced around the store like she hadn't memorized it already. It's quiet here. Too quiet sometimes, he said. You looking for something? Company, she said. Then, after a second, books. A company and books. Both are free today, he smiled. She smiled back, just a flicker, and wandered down an aisle. Over the next week, she returned. Not every day, but often enough that Jacob stopped pretending it surprised him. She never said much about herself. When asked where she was from, she'd say, nowhere in particular. When he asked what she did for work, she shrugged. A little of everything. Nothing lately. She paid for books in cash. She walked everywhere. And she never used a last name. Elena what? He asked one afternoon. Just Elena, she replied, flipping through an old poetry book. That's not suspicious at all, he teased. She looked up, her eyes cool. Maybe I like keeping some things to myself. Fair enough. But still, she stayed. Most people passed through their town like it was a gas station on a long road trip. But Elena, she lingered. He started bringing her coffee without asking. She started helping him reshelve books without offering. It was natural. Unspoken. One day, a customer accidentally knocked over a whole shelf of paperbacks. As Jacob scrambled to fix it, Elena joined him, her hands moving fast and careful. I used to do this, she said. Work in a bookstore? Work in a place where things felt safe. At least for a little while. That was the first personal thing she'd said in days. He handed her a book and asked, "What changed?" She didn't answer. Just placed the book neatly on the shelf and walked to the next aisle. Jacob told himself not to fall for her. Not because she wasn't worth it, but because he knew so little. She was like a locked door with no key, and still he kept walking toward it. He wasn't used to being curious about people. But Elena wasn't people. She was a mystery that made him feel more awake than he had in years. She began staying longer, sitting on the floor between shelves, reading, writing in a small notebook she kept tucked inside her coat. Jacob never asked what she was writing. He figured if she wanted him to know, she'd tell him. He noticed things. She always sat facing the front door. She never wore earbuds. She flinched when someone walked in too loudly. And sometimes when she thought no one was looking, she'd touch her wrist like checking for a watch, but there was none there. One afternoon, rain started early. Thunder rolled low in the distance. Jacob looked up from the counter to find Elena staring out the window, motionless. "You okay?" he asked. "I hate storms," she said, voice barely audible. "You can wait it out here," he said. "I always do." That made him pause. "You've done this before?" She turned to him, expression blank. Waited. Hid. Pretended to be someone I'm not. And then, like she'd said too much, she walked to the back of the store and didn't come out for a while. That night, Jacob closed the shop later than usual. Elena had left during a break in the rain, giving him a quiet good night and nothing more. As he locked the front door, Amanda pulled up outside. "Still working?" she asked from her car window. "Yeah." She tilted her head. "That woman, Elena, she's been around a lot." "Yeah." Amanda stepped out, folding her arms. "I asked around. No one's ever heard of her." Jacob frowned. "Why would you ask?" "Because I've seen that look in your eyes before," Amanda said. "You're curious. You care. And I don't want you getting burned." "She's not dangerous," Jacob said. "You don't know that." He didn't answer. Amanda sighed. "Just be careful." He nodded but didn't promise anything. The next day, Elena didn't show up. Nor the day after. On the third day, he found a folded piece of paper taped to the back of a poetry book she had been reading. Inside was a single line written in her neat, slanted handwriting. "Some names carry more weight than a heart can hold." Jacob stared at the note for a long time. He tucked it into his pocket. The next morning she returned, soaked, shivering, and silent. She stood in the doorway like she didn't know if she was welcome. "You're late," Jacob said, handing her a towel. "I needed to disappear for a while," she whispered. He didn't press her. He never did. She dried off, drank coffee, and helped him rearrange the travel section. That day, she talked a little more. "Do you ever feel like the person you used to be is buried under who you had to become?" she asked. "Every day," he replied. She smiled softly. "Then maybe we're not so different." "I'd like to believe that," Jacob said. That night, as they locked up, she paused at the door. "If I told you the truth," she said, "you might hate me." He met her eyes. "I don't think I would." She looked away. "You should." And then she walked off into the night. Jacob watched her go, heart heavy. She was kind. She was brilliant. She was clearly running. But he didn't care about her past, not yet. He only knew how he felt when she was near. And even if her name wasn't really Elena, she was becoming someone real to him. He didn't understand it. But he wasn't ready to let her go. Not yet. He never expected to find her like this. The rain had stopped, but the streets were still wet and empty, silent except for the occasional drip from the eaves. He walked slowly down the narrow alley behind the cafe where she worked. Something told him to check here tonight. He found her sitting on the cold stone steps, her shoulders shaking with quiet sobs. Her usually bright eyes were red and swollen. The dim light from a nearby street lamp flickered across her face, making her look even more fragile. "Hey," he whispered, stepping closer but careful not to scare her away. "Are you okay?" She looked up, startled. For a moment, she didn't say anything. Then she wiped her eyes and nodded weakly. "I'm fine," she said, but her voice cracked. He sat beside her. "You don't look fine." She swallowed hard and took a deep breath. "There's something I need to tell you," she said, her voice low and trembling. "Something important." He waited, heart pounding, wondering what she was about to say. He had always sensed there was more to her story than she let on, but tonight felt different. He felt she was finally ready to share a part of it. "There's someone dangerous," she said. "Someone who's been looking for me for a long time." His eyes widened. "Who? What do you mean?" She hesitated, then shook her head. "I can't explain everything. Not now. But I've been running from them for years." He reached out and gently took her hand. "You're not alone anymore. I'll help you." Her eyes filled with tears again. "Thank you," she whispered. "But you have to promise me, if I disappear, don't give up. Find me." Before he could say another word, she stood up quickly, pulling her coat tighter around her. "I have to go," she said. "Now." "Wait," he called after her, but she was already disappearing into the shadows. He ran after her, but she vanished into the maze of streets like she had never been there at all. The next hours were a blur. He searched every corner of the neighborhood, asked everyone if they had seen her. No one had. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. He stayed awake all night, calling her phone again and again, leaving messages begging her to come back. Fear gnawed at him. What if this time she was gone for good? What if the danger she ran from had finally caught up with her? He didn't know who she was running from or why, but one thing was clear. Her life was more complicated than he had ever imagined. And now it was up to him to find her before it was too late. He couldn't stop thinking about the night she vanished, the look in her eyes, the fear she tried to hide. He had to know more. He had to find her. The only way was to follow the few clues she left behind. One afternoon, he visited a rundown cafe on the edge of town, a place she'd once mentioned in passing. It wasn't fancy, but it was a place where people who lived in the shadows met quietly. Inside, the air smelled of stale coffee and old secrets. He scanned the room until he saw a man sitting alone in the corner, his face marked by years of hard living. There was something familiar about the man, a quiet strength behind tired eyes. "Are you looking for someone?" the man asked, voice low but steady. "Yes," he said, swallowing his fear. "A woman. She used to know you." The man's face tightened for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. "I knew her. A long time ago." "What can you tell me about her?" he asked, leaning in. The man sighed, looking down at his worn hands. "Her past, it's not clean. She was caught up in things, dark things. Crime. Lies. Secrets that never should have touched her." He swallowed hard. "Do you think she's dangerous?" "No," the man said firmly. "She's hurt. Afraid. Running from ghosts she can't escape. She isn't evil. Just lost." His heart ached hearing this. She was not the woman he had come to care for, but someone damaged by a past she never chose. "Where can I find her?" he asked, desperate. The man looked around carefully, then whispered, "If you want to help her, be careful. She trusts no one. People chasing her are ruthless. Go deeper, but watch your back." He left the cafe with a new resolve. He didn't care about the danger. He would risk everything to find her, to pull her out of the shadows and into safety. No matter how dark her past was, he believed in the woman she was now, and he was ready to face whatever came next. After days of searching, following whispered leads and hidden signs, he found her at last. She was living quietly in a small apartment on the edge of the city, under a name that wasn't hers. When she opened the door, her eyes held the same mix of fear and relief he had seen before. She didn't run this time. He stepped inside, heart pounding. The room was simple but clean, filled with soft light and a few worn books. Felt like a safe place, her hiding spot from the storm she had left behind. She sat down slowly, avoiding his gaze. Then, finally, she spoke. "My real name isn't the one I gave you," she said quietly. "It's something I buried long ago." He waited, silent and patient. "I was framed," she confessed, her voice shaking. "Forced to leave everything behind, friends, family, my whole life. Someone powerful wanted to destroy me, and I had no choice but to run." Tears filled her eyes, but she held them back. "I didn't tell you because I didn't think I deserved love. Not after everything." He took her hands gently. "You do deserve love. You deserve safety. You deserve someone who believes in you." Her breath caught. "I love you," she whispered, voice trembling. "And that scares me. 'Cause loving you means trusting again. And I'm afraid I'll lose you." He smiled softly, pulling her close. "I'm not going anywhere. We'll face this together." For the first time, she let herself believe it might be true. That maybe, even with her past, there was hope. The quiet she had fought so hard to keep was shattered. Late one night, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed outside her apartment. Shadows moved like predators beneath the flickering streetlights. He saw them first, men from her past, hard-faced and dangerous. They had finally found her. "Run!" he shouted, grabbing her hand. They slipped out the back door, hearts pounding. But the city's maze was closing around them like a trap. Cornered in a dead-end alley, there was no way out. One of the men stepped forward, cold eyes full of menace. "You thought you could hide forever." She swallowed hard, but then something inside her changed. The woman in red, the woman who had always run, stood straight. "No more," she said, voice steady. "I'm done running." A fight broke out, fists and fear mixing in the rain-slicked street. He stood by her, fierce and determined, refusing to let go. In the chaos, secrets spilled. Lies she thought were buried were dragged into the light. Trail cut deeper than any wound. But through it all, they held tight to each other, their bond growing stronger in the fire. When the men finally retreated, defeated for now, she looked up at him, eyes blazing with new strength. "This time," she said, "I choose to fight. Not just for me, but for us." He nodded, knowing their battle was only beginning. But for the first time, she was ready to face the darkness head-on. Together. Truth was finally within reach. With the help of an unexpected ally, a woman who had once been tangled in the same web of lies, they gathered the evidence needed to expose the real criminals. Names, documents, secrets, all laid bare like a storm breaking through the dark clouds. Her name was cleared. Past no longer hung over her like a shadow. But fame, attention, a spotlight, those were the last things she wanted. One quiet morning, she slipped away again. This time, though, he didn't chase her blindly. He knew where to look. Weeks later, he found her waiting, under the wide sky on a peaceful beach far from the chaos. She wore red again, not as a signal to run, but as a promise to stay. She smiled, the same woman he had come to love, strong, free, and ready. "I'm here," she said softly. "Not hiding. Not afraid." He reached for her hand, heart full. Together, they faced the endless horizon, a future not defined by fear but by choice. A future with her real name, and with him,